Hello and welcome to Queen Things. I'm your host, KJ Miller. I'm a founder, a lecturer, a content creator. And today on the show, I'm excited to get into a subject I have spoken about before. And it is my one-sided beef with Chappell Roan. We are going to talk about Chappell Roan today. Obviously, she has been in the news, and of late, I have seen the conversation start to turn to there is some sort of orchestrated smear campaign against her, and she is being the victim of cancel culture. And what I want to know is she a victim of cancel culture, or is she experiencing the consequences of her own actions? We're going to get into that. That's kind of going to be our main topic today. Before we get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about some potential, maybe Act 3 Beyonce gossip, rumors that have potentially maybe been spilled by her husband, Jay-Z. I do want to get into that a little bit. And then I do also a little bit want to get into a discourse happening online right now around the Swiftologist. You know, I've spoken about him before. There's a discourse happening now, and I want to get into it a little bit. And then we'll get into our main topic, which is Ms. Roan. So let's do that. And before we do, quick announcement. Yes, the March bonus episode is still coming. I started this month by promising you I would get it to you earlier this month. That was a lie. It was not an intentional lie. I was traveling all last week, and I do mean all last week. For a full week, I was in LA and then flew from LA to Minneapolis, all because I had business. Okay, I'm a business woman. I told you, the first thing I tell you in my intro is I'm a founder. I am a founder. I'm a brand president. I'm running a lot of brands. I'm doing a lot of things. So I was in LA for a week. Then I was in Minneapolis. I've just got a lot going on. My daughter turns 5 this week. It's a busy time. Okay. So I was wrong about when you would get the episode. I was not wrong about the fact that you will get an episode, and it will be a deep dive into Beyonce and Taylor's early careers and the decisions they made that helped them get where they are. And that's the bonus episode you will get. So join on Patreon or on Apple Podcasts, all the many places you can go to get the bonus content. That's my one and only announcement. So let's get to the good stuff. All right. Starting with the potential Act 3 rumors. All right. So if you missed it, Jay-Z recently did an in-depth sit-down interview with GQ, and the clips have been all over social media. And it's a pretty far-ranging interview. They talk about a lot of things in his career. They talk about his decision to put Kendrick on the Super Bowl amidst his beef with Drake. And importantly, they talk about Blue Ivy. Now, in this conversation, basically the interviewer asks, and we'll post a link to the specific clip on TikTok that's gone viral of this interview. But the interviewer asks him, what was it like to watch Blue really step into her own as it relates to the Cowboy Carter tour? Because, you know, she was dancing basically the whole tour. She was on stage. Okay, so he was asking Jay, what was that like? And Jay gives this answer basically saying it was amazing how hard she worked. She worked really hard. She had to fight for this. This is something, you know, on the first tour, she was on it, but she just, you know, was in the one number and didn't have to fight as hard and work as hard as she did for this tour, because she was in almost every number. She was on stage a lot of the time. But then he says, you know, and I had to pull her off stage for a couple of the numbers because I'm not going to have her dancing in like 6-inch. Now, 2 things you should know. Number one, if you're not familiar with the song 6-inch, it is about a working woman. Okay. Quote unquote, wink, wink. By working woman, I mean a sex worker. All right. It's a very sexy song. So yes, I agree. I too probably would not want my daughter, my 13-year-old on stage dancing to that song. But the second thing you need to know is Beyonce did not perform 6-inch during Cowboy Carter, which is why when the Beyhive heard that, we said, wait a minute. Is this a clue? Now, it's very possible it was not a clue, and that was just the first song that came to mind for Jay when he was thinking of like, of my wife's catalog, which songs would I not want my 13-year-old daughter to be dancing to? That one would come to mind. You know, Partition is another one that would come to mind. Rocket is another one that would come to mind. Whole lot of very sexy, very inappropriate songs I can think of in Beyonce's catalog that I would not want my daughter dancing to. But the reason we are sort of globbing onto this is because, well, if he's saying he had to pull her off the stage, then is that because they have already begun rehearsals begun thinking through the set list for the Act 3 tour, because we do believe, collectively, we, the Beyhive, believe we are getting Act 3 this year, which means we would get the Act 3 tour next year. And one thing we know about Beyonce is she starts planning her tours years in advance. Okay, so they could very well have already begun rehearsals for Act 3, in which case she could be doing one of her amazing master mixes transitions that includes 6-inch. And Blue could have been out there during rehearsal being like, I want to be in this. And Jay was on the sidelines talking about, no, not this one. Pick a different number. It will not be this number. If that's the case, obviously we're all very excited. 6-inch. Beyonce has only, to my knowledge, performed that song one time. I think it was at Global Citizens? She did a little number in boxes. Oh, very, very, very sexy. Very sexy. But if we can find it, we'll post the link. But it's not a number that she has performed very many times. And so if we are going to get a performance during Act 3, I'll be there. I was going to be there anyway. But anyway, that's what the Beyhive is all aflutter about. We think we may have possibly inadvertently gotten a clue to the Act 3 set list, which would be amazing. And now I'm going to turn my attention briefly to Swiftologist, because there is a little bit of a back and forth happening right now on TikTok between him and Henny Media. If you're not familiar with Henny Media, he does a lot of like pop culture and music critique on TikTok. I don't actually follow either of them, but I get served their content. And there's a bit of a back and forth that kind of started many months ago about Zara Larsson. Now, what I'm not going to try and do is fully catch you up to speed on the full back and forth. Both of them have made very in-depth, long videos about her album, then about their critiques of each other's critiques of the album. And now, again, sort of coming back to critiques about each other's critiques. It's a lot of back and forth. I'm not going to recap it. What I want to just talk about a little bit is my perspective on the Swiftologist as someone who has consumed his work, does consume his work, not all of it. He's very prolific. He puts out a lot of videos every week, which I think is part of the reason he's so successful on YouTube. But it's far more than I could ever consume. But when I see that he has put one out that I think is interesting, I think most recently the one that I watched in full was his How to Murder Your Career on Nicki Minaj. I think that's what it's called, or How to Kill Your Career about Nicki Minaj, which I thought was a well-done video. And so, I'm probably consuming his content on YouTube, maybe one video every 2 to 3 months. Something will catch my eye. But generally speaking, I find his work to be well-researched, pretty thorough, and entertaining. Again, at least the ones that I'm watching. That said, I have noticed a lot of people online who have basically made the argument that he is not fully racist. I don't think I've seen people, maybe some people, but microaggressive, that he downplays the importance of Black art and Black artists, and sort of like overemphasizes the importance of his favorite pop girlies, most of whom, it should be said, seem to be white, Taylor chief amongst them. And that he does so in a way that very much discredits and, again, undervalues Black artists, Black art. And this is one of the, I would say, main points of contention between him and Henny Media as it relates to Zara Larsson, who is not Black, it should be said, to be clear, but whose executive producer of her album is MNEK, who is Black, and who has been, I would say, in a lot of ways, sort of like uplifted by the Black community. I think some would say a big part of the reason she is now trending and is now seeing more chart success with this album is because of the Black community and a lot of people within the Black community being excited about her streaming her music. Now, I am not one such person in the Black community. I've never been a fan. I've never been someone who dislikes her music. I've just never been someone who's engaged with it. It actually makes me think I should listen to this album maybe even do a review on it. And once again, just like with Olivia Dean, I would be extremely, extremely late to the party, but I haven't done it. So I can't really say anything at all about her music. What I can say is I think there's a there as it relates to the conversation about Swiftologist microaggressions, but I don't know that I see it as nearly as strongly as I am hearing other people talk about it, particularly Henny Media. I think for any non-Black person, particularly any white person, and I think Swiftologist is white. I mean, certainly he presents as white. I know he's from Singapore, so maybe I could be wrong. He looks and sounds and presents as a white man, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think for any non-Black person, you're going to have some racial blind spots, right? As it relates to Black people, as it relates to Black culture. And that goes in a lot of different ways. I have blind spots as it relates to Asian culture and Hispanic culture. Like, that's just going to be true. And I think his critique style and the reviews that he does do mostly lean, in my experience, pretty negative. And he does very much speak with an air of authority. And I think when you are speaking with an air of authority on pretty much any topic, every topic, in his case, it seems, if you're speaking with an air of authority, but you're touching on things and cultures you're not a part of, the chances of a microaggression slipping in are just quite high, right? Whether that's your intention or not. And oftentimes microaggressions aren't intentional. Whether that's your intention or not, when you're speaking as if you are the authority or an authority on a topic that touches on a culture you aren't a part of, there's a very good chance that some microaggressions will slip in there. And so I think the people calling him out for those, for example, when he did, he was doing like a live review and sort of like watch with me of Taylor Swift's Eras documentary, during which time, I think it was during the first episode when they were focusing on Cam's story, he made a comment, and you can find the clip if you want, but he made a comment about like this being the DEI part of the story, right? And obviously people did not like that. I do not think it was well phrased, and I think it was a microaggression. I do. But I also understand what he was trying to say. And I think there is a kernel of truth in what he was trying to say, which is Taylor's producers, Taylor herself, because I think she is a producer on that documentary, but I could be wrong. They want to make sure they are showcasing the diversity of her show, of her cast and crew. They want to make sure she's getting credit for the fact that she is hiring, diverse people and diverse bodies and diverse backgrounds to be a part of her show. That is something they want to make sure she's getting credit for because she is doing it. And I think it's laudable that she's doing it. And I think that's the point he was trying to make. Like with each episode, she's clearly trying to make it clear, like, I'm a good boss for this reason. I'm a strong performer for this reason. I have all this success for these reasons, right? And so she's kind of checking the boxes on like, here's what I'd like to present to you on why I have all this success and why I am a billionaire. And one such reason is I value diversity and I see the beauty in diversity, right? I think that's more the point he was trying to make. If you go and watch like not just that live, but the actual then commentary he put out afterwards. But did it come out, I think, in a microaggressive way? Abso-fucking-lutely, particularly given how charged the phrase DEI has become here in America where he does not live. So yeah, I think there are examples of this. Did I watch his full Zara Larsson review? Certainly I didn't watch the YouTube. It's possible I watched his TikTok Zara Larsson review. And I think if you're talking about a Black producer and you're saying something to the effect of not their best work or didn't work well with this person, that might ring as microaggressive to some people because it might seem as though you're downplaying this very accomplished producer's work. At the same time, from what I recall listening to it, I basically just heard him saying, like, listen, I've seen this person do stronger work. I don't think this is their strongest, which is I think you should be able to level a critique. You should be able to level at anyone, regardless of their race, if that's how you feel. So for me, while I do see these moments of microaggression, I don't see as many of them as I am seeing people point out. And I don't see them being as intentional as I think some people are ascribing, but I do see them. And I do think that it's something that he should work on. He should care about working on. And I don't know if I get that sense. And that is also, I think, a little bit disappointing, and probably one of the reasons why I would never be able to get up on the internet and call myself a Swiftologist stan. I would never be someone who's like paying for his Patreon. I would never be someone who's defending him to the death in the comments. Like I just, as it currently stands, seeing what I'm seeing, I couldn't be that person. However, has he made content that I've enjoyed, that I have found to be, again, well researched and thought out? Yes. Will I continue to consume the content to me that looks interesting and entertaining? Yes. But do I think it is fair for people to be calling out these moments that are presenting as microaggressions? Yes. And do I think he should be concerned with sort of doing the work to try and make sure that he's doing better when it comes to those things? Yeah, I do. I think we should all want to get better if we're hearing feedback leveled seriously against us. That said, one thing he does call out as it relates to Henny is Henny didn't keep the critiques just on the music or on the review. Some of the things he said, I think at one point he used the phrase like he had an aggressive case of gay face. That's just personal, right? Like, and you're allowed to think it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But if you say something like that to someone, I don't know that you can fault them for not just like keeping it on the music or keeping it on the critique or not. Because one of the things Henny then accuses him of is like, oh, you zeroed in on me saying the gay face thing. You zeroed in on this, but you ignored the other, 10 minutes of my critique, which were very well thought out and very well researched. And it's sort of like, yeah, well, if you say something super rude about someone personally, I think you could understand why maybe they're not going to engage as critically with all the other things that you've said. I think that's fair. So I don't know. I guess this is all a very long-winded way of saying I see that the Swiftologist is not fault-free, right? He is not 100% unproblematic. That said, no one is 100% unproblematic. And I just don't know that I see all of the terrible things about him that it seems like other people do. I'm always learning though, and I've said before, if there is just like some super clip mix of all the really terrible things that he has said that I've just missed, put it in front of me. Because I don't want to be supporting highly problematic people. I just haven't gotten the sense that he's highly problematic. I do think he thinks very highly of himself. I think that's clear in his reviews. I think he's done a lot of work and a lot of research to be within his right to think highly of his work. But I also think it's important for creators to be willing to learn, to be willing to be held accountable, to be willing to take the critique about something as sensitive as being microaggressive and as devaluing Black culture, take something like that and really examine it. They can really engage with it. I think that is important, and I'd like to see him do more of that. But we'll see. And that brings us to our main topic, which is Chappell Roan. Of course, if you have been living under a rock, maybe you have not seen that she has been in the news recently, basically for being rude. To summarize, and I actually was texting back and forth with Erica Manganelli about this. You recall Erica. She was my co-host seasons 2 and 3. Still my homegirl. Okay, so it all kicked off earlier this month, earlier in March, when Chappell was in Paris, and she starts filming paparazzi who are, photographing her and filming her. And what we see, this clip starts. I'm watching this on page 6. We'll post the clip. This clip starts with her phone is out, and basically she's saying, I want you to see what it's like. These are all of the people who won't stop following me, who won't stop harassing me. She then puts the camera in a fan's face because he doesn't have a camera. This is just, to me, what looks like a regular fan. He has a piece of paper and he has a pen. So at first she's sort of like trying to videotape everyone, and he has the paper up in front of his face. And she says he has his paper up because he's ashamed. He then drops the paper and says hi to the camera. And it's not even entirely clear to me if he fully speaks English, but I don't know if he was ashamed or if he was just sort of like, I don't know what's happening, because it kind of looks like when she then puts the camera directly on him and he says hi, like he thinks, oh, is this a moment for us together? I don't know, but he's trying to get an autograph. So he's asking her, can I get an autograph? While the rest of the people, it does seem like the rest of the people are paparazzi, and they're trying to take pictures, and they're saying, Chappell, who are you wearing? Who's your designer? Chappell, can I get a photo? The things paparazzi say when they're trying to get a photo of you. And she's filming it and saying, like, I've asked them several times, stop harassing me, stop following me. Like, I'm just trying to go to dinner. And she films the whole exchange, like this whole video on page 6 is maybe 30 seconds long. And after she does all that, then she goes inside. Okay. When I saw this, I have to tell you, I was so done. I immediately rolled my eyes, immediately texted it to Erica. Mind you, the first most liked comment on that video, it has 52,000 likes. It says, her situation with paparazzi, by the way. And then they put a picture of SpongeBob, just his arms out in huge handcuffs that he very clearly can remove his arms from. Okay. And I think that it is an apt photo, an apt image for what we're talking about here, because no one is holding this woman at gunpoint and forcing her to be a celebrity. No one forced her to be famous. She worked at it for years. This was the goal. The goal was to be famous. So now here you are, famous. I'm reminded of Doechii when Doechii was in Paris for Fashion Week. I think it was last year. When I'm telling you the number of paparazzi who were following Doechii was so far beyond this little clip. There were maybe, as far as I could tell from the page 6 clip, maybe 10 good folks following her, I guess, on her way to dinner. Doechii had a swarm of paparazzi. Now I'm thinking about, because I think in Paris, they do a lot in Paris, and they do too much. I want to be clear. They do too much, as we know. But I'm thinking of Beyonce. Beyonce, are you happy to be in Paris? That little quote from the beginning of Partition, because she was literally being followed by swarms of paparazzi. But back to Doechii. Doechii, there's this clip where I think someone lifts her up. I think her security guard lifts her up because there's so many paparazzi and so many fans. And she's like, I'll get to you. I'll get to everybody. I just need space, right? So she's sort of trying to direct traffic and like let everyone know it's okay that you're here. I just need you to cooperate with me so I can, sign the autographs and interact and do the photos and whatever, right? So she's sort of trying to direct traffic because they are doing a little too much, but she's not trying to curse everybody out. She's not trying to curse everybody out and shame them for doing the thing that paparazzi do and that she feels grateful to be a part of, because this is what she has worked for so hard. To be a celebrity, to have people love her music, to have people want to follow her and know who she is. And it just, God, I know there are going to be people who will say she shouldn't have to be grateful for being harassed. Okay, it is not in any way clear from that clip that anybody is harassing her. Let's start there. But I would agree, no, you shouldn't have to be thankful for being harassed. But at this point, it does seem very clear that she seems to dislike so much of being famous that she could just step away from it all. Let me remind you that when Beyonce and Jay-Z got married, none of us knew. And we're talking about Beyonce and Jay-Z. They had a whole secret wedding that none of us knew about, both of whom were far more famous than Chappell Roan. Okay, orders of magnitude more famous than Chappell Roan when they got married. And we didn't know about it. Let me also remind you, Taylor Swift, went into hiding for a whole year. We didn't see nary a wisp of a gasp from her for an entire year. Again, when she was roughly a million times more famous than Chappell Roan. Kerry Washington. Kerry Washington has multiple kids who I still have not laid eyes on, okay? Or if I have, it's been for like 1 to 2 seconds at a time. This woman, again, far more famous than Chappell Roan. So I find it hard to believe that if she really did not want to be private, she couldn't do it. When people far more famous than you have figured it out. So again, back to the image of the handcuffs, the overly large handcuffs that you could very easily escape from. You could escape this, but you're choosing to still be a part of it because this is the work you want to do. And what I want you to know, and what really just pisses me off so bad and frustrates me so bad, is that Chappell is a part of the 1% of people who are living their dreams, who had a dream, who had a career that they desperately wanted and are now living in that career. That makes you roughly a part of the 1%, okay? Most people on this planet do the job they have to do in order to make the money they have to make to live. They're not in their dream job. They're not in the job that when they were a little kid, they would go to bed every night and dream about doing. The vast majority of people on this planet, that is not their life, but that's your life. And you remind us constantly how terrible it is for you to be living your dream. It just is so frustrating when it feels like someone has something that the majority of people will never have and is completely ungrateful for it. And not just ungrateful, but just dead set on making us feel sorry for her. I'm reminded of my mutual, Francesca Ramsey. And one of the things she said years ago about the idea, she was talking about it in the context, I believe, of influencers who were complaining. It may have been in the midst of that Michaela Noguera controversy where she had that video go viral about try being an influencer, and everyone was like, girl, your life is not that hard. But anyway, I think she was saying it in the context of that, where she said, if you need to complain up or complain across. Do not complain down, right? Because you have the life the people below you want. You have that life, so you complaining to them is never going to land. And I agree with that. In fact, I would narrow it to say just complain across, all right? Because the people above you probably don't want to hear it either. But go find some other famous people to complain to, because I believe that it can get hard being followed by paparazzi. I believe being asked by a fan all the time for an autograph, in every corner of the world can get hard. Mind you, I too have been asked for an autograph once or twice in my life. Truly just once or twice. So I'm not saying it compares to Chappell. But I was so excited. I literally was like, I cannot believe anybody on planet Earth would be excited to have me sign something for them. It was actually at a Minted event and they asked me to sign their eyeshadow palette. Loved it. Oh, highlight for me. I'll never forget. Back to the point. I get that can be frustrating, that can feel overwhelming, so on and so forth. Go complain to your other famous friends. All right? Not to us, not to your fans. Why would your fans want to hear you complain about being famous? They don't. It's not going to land the way you think it should land. It simply will not. Don't complain down. All right. This is a good life lesson for anybody. If you get promoted at a job, don't then go complain to your friends who are still at the manager level when you just got promoted to director level, talking about, oh, it's so hard being a director. Bitch, they don't want to hear that. Not from you, because you just got promoted and they did not. Do you see how this works? It's actually not a very difficult concept, and it is applicable to all sorts of people in all sorts of walks of life, not just celebrities. But in your case, this is the life you wanted. It's the life you asked for, and I'm getting tired of hearing her complain about it. Like, if it's not the life you want anymore, and you're allowed to not want it anymore, there's an exit. There is absolutely an exit. Plenty of formerly famous people have taken the road of no longer wanting to be famous. We've seen them do it. Actually, we haven't really seen them do it because they just disappear. They just go live their normal lives. And maybe every now and then you'll see them at Trader Joe's and you'll be like, hey, is that guy who used to be on XYZ show? And then you keep it moving. And maybe every now and then someone will come up to them and say something like, oh, I was such a big fan of blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, they live their normal life. Okay. That is an option open to you. It is not an option you seem interested in taking. So respectfully, you could probably shut the fuck up a little bit more, Chappell Roan, but we don't even end there. That's not even where this ends. Okay. It doesn't even just end with her attempting to shame a fan and a bunch of paparazzi, which would have been enough. Then we find out that she was staying at a hotel in South America. Where was it? Buenos Aires? Sao Paulo? Okay, I was right. It was Sao Paulo in Brazil. That's where Lollapalooza was. This was this past weekend, I believe. And she got basically called out by a famous soccer player who I was not familiar with. His name was, and I apologize if I mispronounce it, Jorginho. Does he not have a last name? Is that his last name? Okay, I don't know if this man has a first name or a last name or which one this is, because I've clicked on 2 different articles now and they're just calling him Jorginho. Anyway, famous soccer player. Famous one-name soccer player, I guess. He posted on his Instagram about an incident, I'm sure you've seen it by now, where his wife and daughter were at their hotel. They had flown there for Lollapalooza, where Chappell Roan was performing. His daughter was a huge Chappell Roan fan. His daughter's 11 years old, by the way. And they were eating breakfast in the hotel. Then Chappell Roan and her security come in because she's eating breakfast in the same hotel. And the girl gets very excited, as an 11-year-old would, as I think anyone would if someone that they're a huge fan of walked into the room. She's not sure if it's her. So she asks her mom if she can go just go walk a little closer to look. Her mom says yes, she does. She walks by the table. She looks at her and then goes back and sits down. She doesn't say anything to her. She doesn't ask her for an autograph or anything. She just goes by the table, looks at her, sits down. Well, then Chappell's security comes over and basically, according to Jorginho and his wife, berate them and say, you're being disrespectful and you need to treat your daughter not to disrespect people, and, goes on and on and on. This makes the little girl cry. So then Jorginho, one name, soccer player, posts on his Instagram, basically relaying this entire story. And, very, very upset about it. And then ends it with Chappell Roan. Your fans got you where you are. You should be more respectful to your fans, like so on and so forth. Okay. Well, obviously this goes viral, and obviously everybody on the internet has an opinion. Many days later, Chappell posts a response. She's lying in bed. She's lying in bed, and her very nonchalant, very half-assed response is basically like, I didn't even see anyone come up to me. I didn't see anything. Also, the security was not my personal security guard. I never sent them to go say anything, and I don't know anything, and I don't hate my young fans. And, I just, does she use the words, I'm sorry? I never wanted that to happen. Maybe she says at the end, and, I'm sorry that happened to the mom and the daughter. Like, I would never want that to happen. Okay. And I'm not even positive she uses the words, I'm sorry. We'll post the clip and you can verify for yourself if she does or she doesn't. The fact that I can't remember, though, is because it did not read as an apology. It did not read as an apology. It was so lackluster. The first 90% of it was just her basically saying, it isn't my fault, because I didn't see anything. I wasn't aware anything was happening, and I didn't personally send my security guard. So that was the first 90%. None of this is my fault. And then the last 10% was, I don't hate my young fans. And, maybe she says, I'm sorry. Terrible. And the reason it's terrible is because even if we accept it as truth that you didn't know about this and you didn't send this security guard to, go yell at these people, and I personally don't know that I believe that. Just given your track record, and we'll get into it, I don't know that I believe that. But even if we accept that as true, what have we spoken about before on this show? Impact matters more than intent. So whether it was your intention or not that this security guard went and did this on your behalf, he did do this on your behalf. And the impact was that it ruined this little girl's time. They had flown there for her birthday to see you perform. And then, according to the mom, didn't even go to the concert. That's how crushed she was. That's how hurt she was. Flew there to see you and then didn't even go. That's the impact of what this person did on your behalf. So whether it was your intention or not, you apologize for the impact and you lead with the apology. It's like no one's ever apologized before. Terrible. Again, it's so frustrating. This woman just finds every opportunity to make herself the victim. And it is beyond frustrating, to the point where I used to call myself a fan of it, not a light fan, a light fan. I honestly don't think I can call myself even that anymore, because when I think of her now, what I think of is the fact that she hates her life. She hates being famous. She doesn't want anyone to come up to her. And even when a literal child is brought to tears by her team, she cannot muster up a real apology. This is insane, folks. Like, this is just, and now I'm seeing people on the internet say that she's being the victim of a smear campaign, because really all she's ever tried to do is be clear about her boundaries. She's a good person. She speaks up for the LGBT community. She speaks up for Palestine. There's no reason she should be canceled. There's no reason people should hate her. This is an orchestrated online smear campaign. Okay. I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad she speaks up for the LGBT community, and I'm glad she speaks up for Palestine. But it seems very clear to me this is simply her experiencing the consequences of her own actions. A smear campaign doesn't make sense to me when we see, quite literally, we see the cause and the effect. We see her being rude to someone, and the effect is people call her rude. We see her making a little girl cry, and the effect is people saying, why aren't you apologizing for making this little girl cry? This is it. It's a 1-for-1. It is not random. It's not coming out of nowhere. We saw when she made those fuck-ass videos attempting to compare Kamala and Trump, the effect of people saying this is some bullshit. These two people are not comparable, and you should be able to say with your whole chest that you support one and not the other. And the fact that you're trying to equivocate is nonsense, right? Like, we see the cause and we see the effect. So calling it an orchestrated smear campaign would make one think that it's coming out of nowhere, when it's coming quite literally from somewhere, a very sensical, logical place. When you're rude, when you are equivocating, when you are not holding yourself accountable, people are going to notice that, and people are going to have something to say about that. And that is what we're seeing. And by the way, the reason people don't seem willing to believe you when it comes to you saying, I didn't send my security guard after that person, is because there are quite literally clips on the internet of you sending your security guard after fans. There are quite literally clips of it. We'll include one. She's in an airport, and clearly there's someone like filming her while she's in the airport. She points to that person, because you can see them point to the phone, points to that person, and her very large security guard starts coming toward them angrily. And it is angrily. So we have evidence of you doing that. And I don't know what this person was doing at the time. I don't know if, along with simply filming, because we're seeing it through their camera. So we don't know if they were just filming, or if they were filming and yelling something, or if they were filming and making lewd gestures. We don't know. It would appear as though this person is just filming. And while I can certainly understand not wanting to be filmed, because she's like in sweats and a hoodie, and maybe it's very early in the morning and she's walking through the airport, I can understand not wanting to be filmed. I don't fully understand sending a security guard over because you don't want to be filmed, because like, filming people isn't illegal. I'm sure it's annoying, but it's not illegal. And it happens, again, to celebrities all the time. So sending your big, bulky, beefy security guard over every time this happens, given that we do have it on video, I think that's part of the reason people aren't willing to believe your story, that you didn't send it. And even again, if it's true, it seems like the precedent has been set. So whether this is your personal security guard or not, it seems as though the precedent has been set that you don't want anyone coming up to you for any reason. And if that does happen, they need to do something about it. The precedent has been set. It starts from the top. You're at the top. You're the celebrity. And so that's why people aren't willing to believe you. There are also supercuts of you yelling at paparazzi and yelling and, sending your security after people. Like, people have made supercuts of this because that's how often it's happening. And so, yes, the vibe is that you are rude and that this is another example of you being rude and of you making it clear, even though you worked very hard to get where you are, to be as famous as you are, you don't want that life. And if you don't want that life, why keep choosing it? It does very much give, I want to complain about this thing to the people who helped me get it. And that is just very confusing. The other thing I do want to say is I understand the conversations that will sometimes take place around this idea that women are expected to be more gracious and more humble. And that is unfair. She should not have to perform gratitude. She should not have to perform humility. She should not have to be silent if she is feeling unsafe or if she is feeling overwhelmed by the number of people filming her or taking pictures of her at any given time. She should be able to be honest about those things. And it's unfair that women in particular are more often expected to be so genteel and so understanding and so gracious and so calm, even when, inappropriate things are happening. And I very much understand that conversation. I don't want inappropriate and harassing things to be happening to Chappell Roan, but I do want for us to be honest about the fact that every job has trade-offs. Every job has parts that we like and parts that we don't like. And I believe Erica and I spoke about this when we spoke about Chappell Roan in a prior season. I love my job. I love that I get to run these beauty brands. It brings me so much joy, but I don't love every aspect of it. And when certain aspects are happening, I am not constantly complaining about those to everybody that I see, and certainly not to my employees, right? Like, you've got to have some kind of filter. And it seems to me Chappell lacks that filter. And that to me is just like about being a grown up. That is just about being mature. It's not about being a woman or being a man. I would give Justin Bieber the same flack. I think I probably have. Like, it's about being mature. It's about being an adult. As an adult, the jobs we choose, particularly those of us lucky enough to be in jobs we love, you take the good with the bad. You take the crooked with the straight, as Denzel would say. I don't see her emotional intelligence on display when I am constantly seeing her complain about these things because, ma'am, part of this is just, it is what it is. Okay. It is what it is. And you constantly complaining about it very much gives juvenile and immature. All right. That's one thing I want to say because I know that that conversation will come up. And I do know that some of these things are gender coded. But what I'm talking about right now is not about being gender coded. It's about being adult coded. Are you an adult or are you not an adult? Because if you are an adult, you do understand that you take the good and you take the bad if you are lucky enough to get to do the job that you love. And the other thing I want to say, and I know there are going to be people who hate to hear me say it, but it's my podcast. I just fundamentally believe Chappell Roan has had one great album, and one great album does not a legend make. You are not a legend. You are not nearly as famous as all the people I named previously. And so there is a part of me that feels like maybe we'd all be a bit more understanding of this behavior if you had earned it. And I I don't even know if that's true because I'm very accustomed to seeing the people who have earned it still being gracious, still, very much making it clear how much they value their fans, and also figuring out how to be away from their fans and from the paparazzi. I'm talking about Beyonce. I'm talking about Taylor. I'm talking about Celine Dion. I'm talking about Christina Aguilera. I'm talking about Cher. I'm talking about the greats. I'm talking about Pink. I'm talking about the women who have been around doing this for over a decade. And, in Celine Dion's case, decades, plural, and who, in my opinion, have more so earned the right to hit us with the diva behavior and still very rarely do. And you're hitting us with so much of it one album in, and it just feels like we haven't earned it. We haven't earned it. It is a great album, but it's one great album. Hit me with 4 great albums and then get on TikTok and give me a rant about how you don't give a fuck if somebody wants your autograph because you don't want to give it and because you're a random bitch. Okay, 4 great albums. Great. 1 great album. I know there are going to be people who say that's unfair, but life isn't fair. I don't know what to tell you. That is my honest to God, that is how I feel. I was willing to give her so much more slack last year, than I am this year, because now we're multiple years in. Okay. Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, I think, came out in 2023, blew up in 2024. We're now in 2026. Okay. So you've been doing this now for multiple years. We're tired. You need to fix it or exit. Whew. And that's it. That's all I've got for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you are loving the show, I would love for you to leave a review, preferably a 5-star review. I always want to engage with you in the comment section, YouTube comment section, on our TikTok clips. I would love to engage. I would love to hear your thoughts on any and everything. I'm in the comments, y'all. If you don't know by now, I'm in the comments. Okay, I want to hear from you, and I'll see you next week.